Now, if you are travelling to Spain with Ryanair in the next few weeks, you may or may not be impacted by a row between Ryanair and the Spanish airline unions. Eoghan Corry is the editor of Air and Travel magazine. Good morning, Eoghan.
Good morning, Jonathan, and refuel in Belgium if you're travelling across Europe. That's the just at the moment.
Solid advice. I'll take it on board. Might cost me a bit to get there.
Far for sure, but yeah.
Anyway, looking at this, Ryanair are saying nothing to see here, keep calm and carry on, whereas the Spanish unions are saying no, we're definitely going on strike. So who do we believe?
It's a bit of both. I mean, the way Ryanair reacted to, they recognised unions very suddenly. If people remember a Friday morning announcement, we are suddenly recognising unions, having spent 20 years slagging them off. They negotiated with more or less the main pilots union, the main cabin crew union in the 20-odd countries they fly through. That left a sort of a second tier of disgruntled trade unions. Sometimes there were a very small membership. We had a series of strikes, 2018, 2019, listeners would remember, didn't disrupt the schedules. Something like, if they got grounded, the maximum would be 20 or 25 flights out of the 2,400. So Ryanair, still continuing with negotiations, all of that. And they signed one in May with the CCOO trade union in Spain, which led to a very sharp reaction from two other unions who have been more or less squabbling with Ryanair over the last 4 years, and they have called a strike. The question is how effective the strike will be. There's two factors at play here, where we've seen strikes against any airline, not just Ryanair in the past. The people who can create an impact tend to be the pilots. They've all the power rather than the cabin crew. The second is how many cabin crew do the two unions involved have the loyalty of the USO and the syndicate CPLA, Lidio Arasans and Monique Dutier. They would be both quite belligerent, opponents of Ryanair over the last 4 years. And the most complicating factor of all of this, Jonathan, is while there's usually a very clear margin between the biggest trade union and the second biggest trade union, this isn't as clear in Spain. In fact, Monique Dutier is saying that they are the larger union, not the one that Ryanair signed the agreement with.
But the challenge here for the consumer is trying to work out what this means for them. It is extremely unfair on the travelling public to do this at the start of the busy summer season. I know the union are trying to play at the strongest hand they can, but they're not going out to get much support. Sure, they're not.
Well, you see, public support is never what this is about. Trade unions in aviation. And remember, outside the public service, the most unionised private sector is aviation worldwide. It's a legacy thing from when airlines were government owned. So it's never about public support. They will strike for when school holidays are closed. They will try and ground the airport. It's a show of strength. And while they had enormous power, some listeners will be old enough to remember that very long strike in 1977 in Aer Lingus, for instance, which impacted our entire GDP. Historians going through economic figures can see the impact of a long strike. Iberia, Alitalia, British Airways, Air France, Lufthansa, very highly unionised. Unions had the power to ground them. With Ryanair, EasyJet, with Norwegian, the new boys in town, even when they are unionised, not all of them have been as strongly antagonistic towards the unions as Ryanair were till 2017. They haven't had the same power to ground the fleet. It takes a little bit of a while for the public to get used to that, because of some of the strike threat nowadays, Jonathan, is not really the impact you cause on the day. It's what you do to forward bookings, and also the political. Obviously, Pedro Sanchez in power in Spain. They want really him to step in and to take a bit of initiative against Ryanair on this in the support of the union demands.
Out of it. Don't be one of the mad dogs and English/Irishmen who go out in the midday sun. Eoghan Corry, just back to you. Airlines, we're talking about fuel prices this morning. Airlines hedge their costs, of course, so the fuel they're using in their planes right now, what was paid for and agreed for months in advance. I noticed this morning Ryanair are talking about an increase of between 7 and 9% in fares later in the summer as they try and deal with this. But inevitably, the cost of flights is going to go up if we're paying more at our petrol pump.
Absolutely, but just an important point there. Ryanair do, on Graham's point on Ryanair's reputation in Spain, they are by far the biggest airline there. They are carrying 50 million of their passengers. Next to Italy is their single biggest market. So while they are sparring with consumer groups and whatever, they have a huge command of the market there, and probably will be able to bring in flights to cater for any intended disruption. The fuel price situation with Ryanair is that they are very well hedged. Michael O'Leary is, instinctively a gambler. He's at home with his elbow on the rail there at Cheltenham as the horses come up the hill, and he hedged 80% of his fuel for this summer, and something like 23% for next year. That leaves a little bit on the edge, and the fuel prices are rising. That will impact probably first on the American side for transatlantic flight, then the European transatlantic airlines, but also very heavily on the tour operators who aren't as well hedged, and the newer airlines, which would include Emerald. So we could see a situation that people with package holidays are facing fuel surcharges, and before very long, Michael O'Leary's comments to Tim Hefford this morning were that he's expecting prices to go up 7-9%. That it would be fairly late in the season, but he is looking at a summer where he has the luxury of being hedged, while some of the rivals are not. And I don't see the same price pressure on airfares in Europe as in other parts of the world, and indeed in prices out of Ireland, where we may be protected by that level of hedging. Aer Lingus have a strong hedging policy as well.
Eoghan Corry, travel expert and editor of Air and Travel magazine.